Good morning, church. I pray that this past week has been a spiritual blessing and an enriching time for you, whether it be because of these devotions or maybe your own personal devotion, or maybe you've just stumbled upon this video. I pray that this past week or your day is filled with many blessings of God's goodness, His love, and His grace. With that, let's begin. When I was in high school, I took part in many extracurricular classes outside of school. Back in Alaska, there was a place called King Career Center. And basically, it was a place where you could go and learn practical job skills to help you get a job after high school, whether it be full-time or part-time, and really just to learn some nice life skills. And I remember being a part of two different classes, one being construction, electricity, and the other one being wood carpentry. Now, I really enjoyed both because while I grew up in Alaska, I was able to take part in the building of our Korean SDA church there. And it was such an exciting and fascinating experience to be a part of, to see the church being built from the ground up and seeing, from the plot of land that we decided the church would be to the finished product of our Adventist church back home in Alaska. So because of that, it kind of prompted me and built this kind of curiosity for me to want to learn more about what it took to build buildings. And so that's why I decided to take these extracurricular courses in construction, electricity, and wood carpentry. Now, the main assignment for the carpentry class was we would build sheds, and then they would be sold later to support like different causes and different other projects around the city. And the main assignment for the construction electricity class was to wire the sheds that we would build in carpentry class so that these sheds would have functioning outlets and lights and the whole 9 yards. Now, when it comes to carpentry or building a building or a shed, what do you think is the most important part of the building? Is it the walls? Is it the roof? Is it the windows? The doors? Well, many carpenters would probably say, build from top down, right? You would build the roof, not actually build it and put it up, but carpentry usually, and especially building houses and sheds, you would build all the pieces and then put it all together. But really the most key and fundamental, most important part of any kind of construction is the foundation, right? Because the foundation is where you will put your walls. That's where you will end up putting the roof and everything else that goes in it, right? And we also know this in the Bible because the Bible talks about building a strong foundation, right? Even Jesus shares a wonderful parable about building on a strong foundation, building on the rock. But did you know there's something even more important than a foundation? You want to guess what that is? It's a cornerstone. Now, in wood carpentry, there isn't necessarily a cornerstone, but if you look at masonry carpentry, or basically construction with stones or anything other than wood, the most important part is actually the cornerstone. Now, because the cornerstone is the first stone that is set, it's usually used to help position and determine the placement of all the other stones that'll help build the entire house or building, right? So without the cornerstone, it becomes a challenge to determine and figure out where and how everything else will be laid out. So you see, the Bible actually talks about the importance of both a foundation and a cornerstone, but even more so, it focuses in on the importance of the cornerstone in our Christian walk in our communities. Look at what Paul says in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 19 to 22. It says this: "Consequently, you are no longer foreigners and strangers, but fellow citizens with God's people and also members of His household, built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, with Christ Jesus Himself as the chief cornerstone. In Him, the whole building is joined together and rises to become a holy temple in the Lord. And in Him, you too are being built together to become a dwelling in which God lives by His Spirit." Remember, Paul is talking to the church in Ephesus, and one of the things we have to remember is Paul is talking a lot to Gentile Christians, or basically Christians that didn't have Jewish background. So he begins and he's speaking to these very people, and he says, hey, you're not different. You're not any less than these other believers. You are a fellow citizen with God's people, and you are a member of this household. In other words, Paul is saying, you're not an outsider. You're a part of this family of God. And that's what the gospel message is all about. We're a part of this large family of God, and we're all invited to accept this gift of salvation. But the basis in which we are all called one big family of God is found in two things. One, they are built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, or in other words, the people and the teachings that we find in the Bible. And then two, more importantly, Jesus Christ as our chief cornerstone. You see, church, Jesus is the beginning of the beginning. Jesus is the foundation of the foundation. He is really the most important part of the entire structure of church community and of our faith. But it's because of the fact that he is our chief cornerstone that we can lay out our foundation and our faith in him. And what's even more beautiful is that because Jesus is the chief cornerstone, he brings us together, people of all kinds of backgrounds, so that we can have these wonderful communities of believers. But even better yet, when we place him as our chief cornerstone, Paul says that God dwells and lives with us. Our motivation, our drive, our everything is because of God. So remember, let's make Jesus the chief cornerstone of our communities and of our faith.